I am the LEGO Batman timeline guy. At this point, I might just be the LEGO Batman guy in general. So when I witnessed the reveal of TT Games' brand new next LEGO video game, my heart sank. Not necessarily in like a bad way, but more in like a, oh my god, they can't do this to me way. We're going to take a look at where LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight will fall on our master timeline, or if it will at all. Obviously, there are some things I should state before we begin, like the obvious that this timeline is in no way intended by that same development team. This is mine. They make these games because they're told to, and of course it makes them money. If DC was to say, hey, TT Games, you're making another LEGO Batman game, but the villain has to be Brainiac because of Man of Tomorrow's movie announcement, the last thing on their mind would be, how do we make this work in conjunction with LEGO Batman 3? These games are their own separate entities, and the points of these timelines aren't to make some official definitive statement, but to show rather that these games all do, coincidentally, fit together in a really neat fashion, and overall is just a really interesting deep dive. We last left off with what I thought would be our final timeline, where we chronologized events spanning over 4,000 years. This was done with meticulous attention to detail, analyzing character biographies, data entries, cutscenes, civilian dialogue, and so much more. Then, this trailer dropped.
Fire.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room. This game is covering nearly 8 decades of the character's history, borrowing from film, comics, and other video games alike. When making connections like the ones we have between games, you're not really looking for a direct link, more just a lack of contradiction and tangential evidence that supports that same lack of a contradiction. The problem with Legacy is that there is going to be so much in this game that it's inevitable something will conflict. This video is very preemptive, and instead of speculating on what might be in the game, we're going to take all the marketing and teasers at face value. Thankfully, we only have to look at a small chunk of our timeline to begin, that being from about 30 BLB, that's before LEGO Batman, to 0 BLB, because we know the game is a prequel, and that era covers what would be around the time of Bruce's origin. The main events we're going to be analyzing, funnily enough, center around Robin, which is wonderful because every single timeline or theory video we make is always determined on what white boy is underneath the mask at whatever time. Or, you know, I guess in Stephanie Brown's case, white girl. So what do we know about this game? Well, as covered in the past few videos, we have a great idea of who the game's rogues gallery is going to be, as well as confirmation of our 7 playable story characters. There is, of course, Batman and Dick Grayson's Robin, who eventually becomes Nightwing, then Jim Gordon and Batgirl, and to top it off, Catwoman and Talia al Ghul. First up, Dick Grayson. Because we get to watch him grow up from Robin into Nightwing, we can breathe a huge sigh of relief. The first LEGO Batman game follows Tim Drake's Robin, with Nightwing being a playable side character. Nothing contradictory there. Sure, I imagine we'll have to make some alterations to his blue line here because it seems like Bruce and Selina adopt him at a very young age, which will only require us to stretch this a little further out. While we're on the Bat family topic, let's talk about Catwoman. She was one of the more interesting parts of the trailer to me because I couldn't really tell the role she was going to play in this game's story. Luckily for us, and thanks to this IGN interview, we have confirmation that Bruce and Selina are going to be, at some point, a couple in this game. And it's those two who adopt Dick Grayson after his parents, swan dived into the floor.
He'll go to the circus with Selina Kyle, and that's where we'll go to see the Flying Graysons.
Initially, this might raise some red flags for a lot of you. She's a villain through and through, even being part of the Legion of Doom, at least to an extent. But in that same game, we also see that she and Bruce have a pre-established rapport, maybe even flirtatious. The key word for this video is recontextualization. The relationship between Bruce and Selina has always felt weird. They have some sort of romantic history dating back to even the very first LEGO Batman game, and the fact that that carries all the way through to DC supervillains is impressive, especially considering how many times Batman has thrown her back into Arkham. Us finally getting to witness their relationship is really, really important, recontextualizing this first kiss from seduction to rekindling, or maybe both. So as long as she ends up a morally ambiguous or bad character, this does not contradict anything in our timeline. Even DC Supervillains' description of her says that despite her relationship with Bruce, her loyalties lie only to herself. Jim Gordon is an easy placement as well. We don't get really any information on him in any of our 5 games, so there's nothing to contradict. Unless they retcon him being from, like, I don't think Chicago, that'd be super weird. Talia falls into the same category. She's playable in the DS version of LEGO Batman, but that's it. She's not even in DC Supervillains. Despite her not being in the game, she is the mother of Damian Wayne, who is. And with this supporting data entry in LEGO Batman 1, we can only hope that some remnant of this tracks into Legacy of the Dark Knight. This leaves us with the most problematic character on our list, Batgirl. Out of just the main story characters, she will be the linchpin of if our original LEGO Batman timeline is going to be in consideration when making this game, because she is one of the only characters with a pre-established origin story. I talked about this a little in the Why We Need LEGO Killer Moth video, which you should go watch, by the way, it's pretty epic. But Batgirl got her start saving Bruce Wayne from a kidnapping by Killer Moth. This is as specific as it gets. Not only is it also one of her main comic origins, but it's written here plain as day. It's an integral part of her character that, if that represented, throws a wrench in our work. Because this information came from a now defunct Flash website, you can definitely make a case that it could be retconned pretty easily and just forgotten about. But I want to hold out hope that this will happen and will further support our placement. Either way, it's time we shift from the main characters over to our villains, before finally tackling the story. We have a lot of confirmed villains for the game, and I'm going to tell you right now, a majority of these don't really matter. It's not like we witness any of the origins of the characters in LEGO Batman 1. When we jump in, it's a pre-established Gotham with a pre-established rogues gallery. I guess we do read about Two-Face's origin in the first game's data entry, but this is the most common interpretation of the character, so I doubt this will change. The only other villain I could see having an effect on our original timeline is Ra's al Ghul. If you cross-reference some information from DC Supervillains and LEGO Batman 1, we can kind of pinpoint his origin as 400 years ago, somewhere in the 400-500 range. And I doubt that in Legacy's going to be saying stuff like, I was born exactly 400 years ago on this day. But if they start going the route of like, I've been alive for a millennia, we're going to start having a lot of problems. Now the game's story. We don't know a whole lot about this. We know it's going to be Bruce's origin as the Dark Knight, his training, and eventually, his start as Batman. But we only know that from small glimpses of the trailer and whatever parts of the Red Hood level us creators played over at Gamescom. The Red Hood mission was a really interesting choice for us creators, though, and me specifically, as Joker's origin in LEGO Batman 1 is also ripped straight from Zero Year. And we see Joker fall right into the acid at the end of the mission. It's these kinds of consistencies that make our theory what it is. Yes, his description in DC Supervillains does read that his origin is, forever shrouded in mystery, but this is an Argus file, not what Batman knows. They might have just different kind of informational sources there. In the trailer, we do see a couple of neat details that kind of support what the first game sets up. Like Bruce discovering the Batcave by falling into it, or his training around the world to become Batman. But nothing hyper-specific. And although small things are coincidentally lining up, it feels a little, straw graspy. Like the entry where it talks about him training with Nepalese monks or African bushmen may or may not appear in the game. Does it mean he didn't, or did we just not see it happen? It's just not a call that we can make right now. Look, this is a very preemptive timeline video. We won't really know if this game fits in until it comes out, but I will say it's looking very positive. Again, it's meant to be its own thing. Much like DC Supervillains, it's a separate, more contained entry that sort of has some homages in relations to the first game. But as long as the game is good, do we really care that much? It would suck to abandon this version of LEGO Batman right after they set up Crisis at the very end of DC Supervillains, but we've been asking for a more street-level Batman-oriented game for years, and we're finally getting one. So instead of just sitting on the fence and giving you guys some ambiguous ending, I'm going to definitively say to myself that I do believe this game will fit into our canon very nicely. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of content in the game that could contradict some things, but from what we've seen, a lot of the origins that TT Games is borrowing from for these newer iterations of these characters are the same ones they used way back in 2008. It's all lining up in a really nice way, and the time period being from before the first Batman game, or it being his origin, I don't know, it lends a lot of credence to it being maybe not as far away as we think, if that makes sense. Sure, there are still going to be weird gaps in our timeline, like what the hell happened to Jason Todd, but if those things are absent from Legacy, it's not Legacy's fault. They've already been absent. Take what you will from this video. If you want the game to be canon, I'm sure you can make it work in your own head. If you don't want it to be canon, well then you don't have to think of it as canon. I don't think it really is going to matter much outside of my personal interest in just chronologizing, whatever that word is, the entire, timeline of these games and all their events. Again, I think it's a really interesting topic to talk about. I think it's fun to find the small little overlapping coincidences, but overall, as long as the game is good, it really doesn't matter to me all that much. But thank you guys for watching. This has been a nice quick little update video on where our timeline is at, and I'm sure we'll have plenty more to talk about when the game comes out next year. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in a couple weeks.